the most expensive stuff here. But then there's a question, if the equipment breaks, who will pay for it? And I don't mean like get shot and your lens is flying away or something. Usually it's much simpler, like you dropped your backpack while leaving the airport or stuff like this. Who's going to pay for it? And if you don't know who's going to pay for it, a lot of people say, okay, then I don't want to do it. And so this is basically where people end up pretty quick. And then they say, okay, if I spend so much money and all this stuff and I go to somewhere where the bombs are, how do I get my story? And a common question that people ask me is with which fixers I'm working. And fixers are basically people who are locals usually, and who bring you to some sites, to some people where you can take good pictures. And I never worked with them because for me it's against the, let's say, the basic idea of journalism. I think you have to see stuff with your own eyes, you have to experience it on your own, but it should not be tempered with like joining an army and being embedded, or like flying in Angela Merkel's jet with her and then say, yeah, but I'm neutral or stuff like this. And so I don't work with fixers because I don't know this guy and I don't know the guys he's showing me. Maybe it's his cousin and his brother and somebody he knows. And especially when it comes to Kurdistan, Iraq and the war against Islamic State, I read several articles around the world which were more or less the same. And then I asked the people which fixers they used, and it seemed that they used the same fixer, and he brought them to the same front line, to the same family in the same refugee camp, to the same local politician, and it was really like the same tour in several articles. I said, okay, of course, then you get the pictures quick, and you get your story, and you can sell it, and so on. But let's say from the point of journalism, there's no benefit, because you did the same tour, and you don't know what you missed. And so that's an approach I just don't do, I don't like. If I go somewhere and I don't get in touch with anybody, then I will tell people I didn't meet anybody, I don't have a story, nothing happened here. Happens. But I don't like the idea of using fixers. I know I'm very lonely with this opinion, but yeah, that's how I see it. So, the most important thing is that journalism nowadays is of course a business and not exactly about finding the truth or about being the best or something like this. So, imagine you have trip costs of about, let's say, 2,000 to 5,000 euro. And on the other hand, you have a news agency which gives you the material more or less for free. Of course, it's not for free, but you have a contract with them, you can use their material and so on. And then there is some guy and say, okay, give me $5,000 and I go to Kurdistan, Iraq, and maybe I return with a story, or you just use the agency stuff and print it. That's basically a no-brainer, because at the end you have to sell advertisement on your website and you need content to make people click. So, and maybe the agency got from some freelancer photograph a nice line of photos, 10, 15 photos of a refugee camp and poor children and stuff like that, stuff that clicks well. And then you put every picture on a single page and put banner advertisements on top and bottom, and that's just the better business case than sending someone and hope that he will return with a story. And then there is like something in between, using freelancers, which more or less all German newspapers and TV stations do. If you have a newspaper you usually read, send them an email and ask, do you have people who have a fixed contract, who are working with you, not on freelancer base, not something like this, who go to war zones? So do you have really your own people there? And like 99% of the cases, the answer will be no. They have like 200, 400 people, but nobody who's going to the war zones. One of the few exceptions is Welt. They have at least one guy who went to Syria a few times, and Bild-Zeitung, who had two guys, Paul Ronsheimer and Klaus Weinmann, who spent a lot of time at the front lines. But they have enough money in the newspapers to just like say, okay, do it, and maybe you return with a nice story. But using a freelancer as like from the business side is much better, because you can say, okay, go there, and if you return with a big story, then I will pay you. If not, hey, it's your business, not mine. And of course, there are freelancers who can sell the story in advance and stuff like this, but at the end, it's using disposable, cheaper people, because you don't want your own staff to be killed. And that's really bad, because if he gets hurt, if he don't return with a story, it's his problem, not yours. And that's really bad. And so that means there are really incredible good freelancers, but the way they are treated is often just not fair. And so, that's business. On the other hand, if you're a freelancer and you haven't sold your story in advance, but you had all the cost, then you have a lot of pressure that you have to find a story somehow desperately to return with. And some people were caught with making up stuff, which was really bad, and others went into really big danger, returned with interesting stories, but on a very, very high cost. And the most important thing, your readers are not experts. So they don't know if the story is made up, if the story was written by your own staff, by a freelancer, if it's the whole picture or whatsoever. So basically, from a business point of view, you have to have something that clicks or that fills the page and that you can put ads on it. And that's it. It's not exactly about finding the truth in the first place. And that really sucks. And people say, yeah, but the way it is, journalism is business. They say, yeah, but why? Why do you just say that the way it is? It's not good, so don't accept it. So, what happens if you talk about stuff and you're not an expert on? I tried to explain it several times with stuff from war zones, and people just didn't get it. But then, a barely sober pilot told me a story, like a funny story, just a joke, but it sums it up perfectly. Said, imagine you're in a single-engine plane, like as a passenger, and it flies, and then the engine fails, and it's off, and you're gliding. And the pilot starts sweating and try to manage to get the plane to the ground, and he made it, and you have no clue of physics or anything. So, like the war reporter who doesn't know what's going on. Then you might write in your article, well, the fan on the top of the plane that's cooling the pilot, it went off, so he starts sweating. I said, okay, that's pretty much what I experience in Warzone pretty often, exactly this kind of knowledge of what's going on. And I see, okay, everybody understands this story, so I can use it from here on. But basically, yeah, that's what we're talking about. And then people say, it can't be that bad, and okay, some examples. Spiegel, the biggest and best and fail-safe newspaper who were never caught with fake news. They, or one of their guys, reported, why is it in German? Sorry. They reported that there was a rocket attack on Erbil, on the capital of Kurdistan, Iraq. And that the rocket hit the airbase, which is next to the international airport. And and it was like 1 month ago, about 1 month ago, when Iran shoot rockets to Iraq. I said, okay, might be. The only problem is, this is a picture I took myself of this airbase 48 hours later. There is not exactly a big hole somewhere. Okay, so I went there and asked, hey, 4,000 people here, are you aware that you had a rocket attack 2 days ago? They said no. Seems that we missed it. And Tobias Huch was, I'm not sure if you can see it, yeah, he was, as far as I know, in this building or somewhere here, in that night, at the very moment where the rocket struck. He said, oh, I was asleep, seems I missed it, and when I woke up, they fixed it already. So I asked around, there are like 1.5 million people in the city, and said, do you know anybody who's aware of this rocket attack? Everybody said, no. So I asked the guy at Spiegel and said, are you sure that the rocket struck here? Because one was reported to have hit Erbil, but it was, I drove there with a really good car and was driving as fast as you can in Erbil. It was 1.5 hours from there. And it wasn't in the city of Erbil. It wasn't the province of Erbil. It was a neighboring province, which is Duhok. And there it hit a field, an empty one. I said, do you mean the rocket like 1.5 hours from here? Maybe? And the guy from Spiegel told me, no. He has evidence that it was there, and he has very reliable sources. And he wrote it on Twitter, like publicly. A lot of people from there wrote him, I'm living here. It didn't happen. He said, no, we have good sources. Okay, I think discussion ends here. Okay. What else? Then FATS, another very reliable source of information in Germany, reported that the Peshmerga in Syria were now left by the US troops, and that Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer says that's a pity or something like that. I say, yeah, well, but you know that the Peshmerga are the army of Kurdistan, Iraq. Iraq. You know Iraq. While the Americans left Syria. Look it up on a map. And then the reply from FATS was, we have to ask our experts about that. Said, okay, do your experts have access to, like, the big tools like a map or common knowledge? But just 36 hours later, they came back to me and said, oh, you're right. Said, okay, I learned that at 4th grade, how to use a map, the different colors and stuff like that. And so that's like fact check made in Germany. And then another thing that was, I was talking to someone at like a few years ago at a security conference, and he told me that of course the German Bundeswehr, the German army, delivered Milan rocket launchers to the Peshmerga in North Iraq, which was quite important. And he said, yeah, but they gave it to the YPG, to the Kurdish rebels in Syria. And I said, I doubt it because they don't really like each other. It's complicated, but they have common enemies, but they're not exactly friends. It's very tricky. And the Peshmerga know if the weapons travel to other locations, they will never ever get a German weapon again. So I doubt the story. He said, no, we have pictures of it, and it's for sure, and it went through the newspapers. And then I said, okay, can I see the pictures, and do we have it on a better zoom level? And then I said, okay, but that's a French Milan, not a German one. And he said, no, they are the same. I said, no, the only thing I know about this thing is that the French used like a cartridge system for cooling, it looks like a bulb, and it makes not much sound, and you can use it like 1 or 2 times to cool the system. While the Germans wanted to use a compressor, which is rectangular, and it's noisy. And that was like, they both had different ideas how to do it, so they built 2 different versions. And this one had like a bulb. So I said, okay, maybe it's one of the French Milan Syria bought in the 70s. And then they captured it from one of Assad's troops or something. And he said, I never heard about this detail, and I'm the weapon expert of my newspaper and so on. I said, okay, I have really reliable sources. I have, the best sources of them all. It's called Wikipedia, and there are pictures. And it's really, I don't have deep knowledge about the Milan system. I read exactly this thing on Wikipedia, and then I checked it with the pictures from the armies and so on, and yeah, it's the way it is. But stuff like this. So people have limited knowledge or no knowledge, but they say I'm the expert, and again, in all of the stories, the average reader will not know the difference. And he doesn't care because he kind of trusts the newspaper. And on the other hand, when I ask people, okay, but which newspaper do you read? And you trust it 100%. You never ever doubt any line of them. They say, okay, that newspaper doesn't exist. Say, okay, but that's a problem. Because go back like 40, 50 years, stuff like Spiegel, FAZ, Süddeutsche Zeitung in Germany, it was plain truth what they printed. You trusted them 100%. And nowadays it's like, yeah, it's like Wikipedia. See who edited it the last time and maybe it's okay and stuff like this. But it's not just the truth anymore. And that's really bad. So, and then, how do I do it? It's a bit different. I just went there. Make a long story short, I had a friend living there and I visited him and was there as a tourist. And then the war swapped over and I came back. And when I wanted to know something, I just asked around. I said, hey, have you seen the front lines? Which direction? How far? Can I go there? And whenever somebody asked, do you want to? I said, yes, yes. I can tell you it's not always the smartest idea, but you get very far. It was like 3 weeks ago, somebody said, want to go to Mosul? I said, yes, of course. Why not? And we actually went to Mosul. I didn't expect that because since, I think, years now, usually journalists or NGOs or some people like that are not allowed in. And so we went to Mosul and we went even to al-Baghdadi's mosque and to the building of his security staff, and we ran around at the roofs of the different houses that were hit by airstrikes and stuff like this. And while running around, 2 questions came to my mind. One was, I thought I packed a bulletproof vest, but it's still in the hotel. Because, well, we started a bit early. And the other thing was, there are rumors about mines in these houses. I should have asked before entering. And so I shouted down to some really old guys there and said, if there are mines somewhere, and said, yes, but not here. I don't think. No, it should be safe. It worked, but you should check like this earlier. But basically, if you do it this way, you see a lot of stuff. And the funny thing was, the journalist, the one I told you about on the previous slide, told me, don't do it. It's dangerous. Like if you board the plane going to Iraq, you die. On the door of the airplane, you die. Everybody dies in Iraq. No people live there and stuff like this. And then I said, have you ever been there? Of course not. Okay, do you know anybody there? No. Nobody knows anybody there because all dead. Yeah, all dead. And then I asked journalists who were there, and they said, okay, be careful and stuff like this. Okay, of course, I'm always careful. But they said one thing, if you go there once, you will kind of get hooked. You will return and return and return, and someday you will die there. That happened to a lot of people. And on the other hand, give it a try, but be careful. I thought that's interesting. The ones who've never been there telling me not to go, and the one who's been there say, yeah, careful, but do it. And so I kind of started, and it was a bit funny because I was told if you go there with no big experience and with like not being an expert and so on, nobody will read you stuff, nobody will print you stuff, and nobody will talk to you there. It won't work. 100% sure it doesn't work like this. Said, okay, that's the same expert who saw the rocket attack on Erbil and stuff like this. So, I said, okay, what might be the biggest problems? And there's an interesting saying from the Americans, and they say war is boring until it's not. And that's pretty much what I experienced. It was like when I was at the front lines between Peshmerga and Islamic State the first time, I thought, okay, now hell will break loose and it will look like Berlin 1945 or stuff like that. And there were a bunch of people sitting around drinking tea. I said, okay, is this a front line? I say, yeah, don't go any further. There are mines and everything. Okay, but where's the Islamic State? And they say, yeah, use a binocular, like 200 meters that direction, you can see the flags waving. I said, okay, so this is war? So yeah. I said, okay, nobody's shooting. And they say, yeah, like once a day they fire a few shots to see if we are there, and like we reply that we are here. They say, yeah, because they don't want to attack Islamic State at this stage or that day because they don't have any backup. So why? It's like poking the hornets. Why? On the other hand, the Islamic State was afraid that they might have a big backup, so they didn't attack. And so it was a stalemate, and everybody was kind of okay with it. I asked, okay, when was the last big fight here? They said it was about 93 against Saddam. I said, okay, but this is like Kurdistan, Iraq. I said, yeah. Shopping malls, leisure parks, stuff like this, roller coasters, that's Kurdistan. And yeah, here's a front line, but you know, war's boring until it's not, that's it. But if the shit hits the fan, it can go very quick. So after being there the first time, I started to do like courses on emergency medical treatment and stuff like this. And there I learned that like if a bullet hits you on the wrong place, you're dead in like 3 minutes. And you have about 1 minute to help yourself because then you're knocked out. And that's an interesting number because 3 minutes is not very long. So you really have to think about how close you want to get. And of course you see a lot of shit. You see people getting hurt, getting killed, getting torn apart and stuff like this. It's really horrible. And usually you don't have time to prepare yourself for that. Either you see it or not, but there's not like training and check and maybe it works. So, and there's like no way of getting explained how it is. People told me, yeah, you will find ways to deal with it or not. And it's like, okay. But interestingly, the war reporters I met told me, yeah, well, the 3 biggest problems are, number 1, not getting a story. That's the biggest problem. That's number 1. Then it's getting hurt, because then you have a story. You have the story you got hurt by terrorists. That's amazing, but you got hurt, you know? It depends on how hard. And then you could get killed. Okay, but that's like, you know, it's on the end of the list. Maybe you get killed, but not getting a story, that's a problem. And that's really weird. And that are like people who do it on daily basis, and so they are really, a lot of them are really kind of crazy. So, thought, okay, can I have success in doing this? And I don't need like money or stuff like this, just can I tell the truth? Can I learn something? And this is a nice picture. You see me here on my mobile phone, not being patient. That's not so spectacular. But like here, on the other side of the picture, in this very moment, it's the president of Kurdistan talking to some 70,000 people in Erbil about the Kurdistan referendum about the independent Kurdish state. He later said that was the most important speech of his life. And I was one of the few sitting in the VIP area behind him, like 70,000 on one side and about 50 of the cool kids behind him, and I was one of them. So I think I got some success in the field because I was the only journalist there. Even CNN was on the other side. So, and then you see a list here of newspapers, magazines, and so on, which used my material within the first year I did these things. But this is also the list of the people who used it without asking or paying, which was kind of interesting. I found my material everywhere and said, okay, when did you ask me? And Spiegel told me that's completely okay to use other people's material without asking or paying. No, of course not. They put their logo about my copyright. And they say that's legally, that's completely okay. But to be fair, they will mention me in future. The lawyer said a different approach on that. And it seems that the German law and the court see differently as well. But surprise, yes, amazing. And I think, hey, this is a pirate party thing. We don't know about copyright. They know, they do. If they say it's okay, it must be okay. So end of the story was, for me it was kind of funny. But what I learned then, some of the newspapers kind of try to threaten me and say, yeah, but if you publish this story, and I put it, of course, on my blog, we will never ever work with you again. I said, okay, just, the basics of like being a mafia guy or something. A threat must be negative for the one you're threatening. If you say, we won't steal your material again, I don't really see the point here. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm too stupid, but I don't get it. It's like the bully in school coming to you and say, if you're not crying, I won't hit you again. Yeah, okay. But some of them really did. Spiegel used my material later without paying again and without asking again. But a lot of them really told me, no, we won't work with you because in your blog post, you wrote about us that we did copyright infringements, and that was bad of you. But on the other hand, a lot of freelancers stayed in touch with me and said, thank you, it happens all the time, but I need the money and I need the next contract and so on, so I don't want to talk about it. So I said, okay, that's good for me. Then on the other hand, it's really just like name dropping, but to say, people told me you won't have success, it doesn't work this way, blah, blah, blah. I met president, prime minister, all the ministers, all the major generals, most generals, soldiers, the museum directors, governors. I lived in military bases, went to all the refugee camps, and so on. So basically, I saw everything, met everything, and I'm still invited to everything. So it works. But I don't see anybody from the newspapers mentioned here when I'm at a party at the president's house or something like that. So it worked for me, but not for them. So now, how to fix it. The problem, I told you before, basically simple. So people need to make money, okay. The companies need to make money, the journalists need to make money, I understand that. But if you do war journalism from home or from Berlin, or sometimes the public media from Germany or state media, they have the experts on Iran who live here in Munich, and then they are asking in Munich what's happening in Iran. Or the studio in Cairo is telling stuff about Iraq. It's not even the same continent. And think, why ask somebody in Cairo? Ask the guy on the next desk or something. He's also not on the same continent. So, or ask people on site, do a proper fact check. And it's also interesting. Sometimes I'm consulting some newspapers in Berlin or their newbies and talk to them about fact checking. Said, okay, did you learn in the last 2 years in this newspaper how to do a proper fact check? They say, yes, of course. Said, okay, if somebody says a rocket hit Erbil, how do you do the fact check? And they say, okay, that's easy. If an agency says it happened, then it happened. I said, okay, now seriously. And all of them there told me, yeah, but that's what's considered a fact check here. If an agency says it, then it's the truth. So, okay. Then I asked the one who was training them and said, okay, so what did you tell them what a fact check is? He said, yeah, I'm doing this job since 20 years. That's how we do it. I said, okay, so why exactly are you working here and not being replaced by 2 lines of PHP script, which puts the agency stuff on? And they say, yeah, we do that. On about 30-40% of the cases, we do that. I said, okay. Well, so on the other hand, if you don't know what's happening, don't pretend that you know it. Just say, no, we don't have anybody there, but that's our sources say we think it's like this. But that's also a problem. It's important to be the first one to report something, even if there's no benefit in being the first one. It's exclusive and breaking news and stuff like this. Or sometimes you have like breaking news, a car exploded in Berlin, and then you click on it, and then you have the bracelets with further information later. Say, yeah, okay, but why did it explode? Who did it? Where? But you were the first one to publish the headline, and that counts. And so, yeah, basically I think a lot of journalists are not doing their job. They don't do a fact check. They don't even know what a fact check is. It's incredible. And they're writing about stuff they don't know. But the thing is, if you say, okay, you need war correspondence, ask one of the freelancers if he want to have a contract for the next 10 years. Maybe he won't. Or spend really a lot of time and money and get your own experts, and like not only on this subject. I guess, when it comes to copyright, when it comes to IT, when it comes to whatever, usually everybody reads articles and says, it's wrong. And that happens everywhere. Because everybody has to be able to write about everybody quick and a lot and put the banner ads on it and so on. But you don't have that many experts anymore. And that's really, really, really bad. And on the other hand, then the newspapers say, well, we don't earn enough money anymore, so we have to make it even cheaper. So yeah. So how to fix it? Of course, it's not, even if we do all of this stuff, we won't fix the problem. That's just a few ideas. First of all, pay for good journalism. That's basically the problem. Do you know where to get good journalism? That's a big problem these days. And I would like to pay just for one journalist or for one part of the newspaper, but not for the other one, not for the other idiots around him, stuff like this, but that doesn't work. So sometimes you have like freelancers who have a newsletter you have to pay for, or they have, I don't know, some kind of abo model on their homepage, and I'm paying for a lot of freelancer journalists' newsletters I don't even read, but I know I support them and they're doing good work. Then just annoy them. Say, have you been there? Are you sure it happened? Did you do a fact check? And it's interesting because often they're really pissed off if you ask, did you do a fact check? They say, we're a newspaper, we know the truth, blah, blah, blah. And they say, yeah, but did you do a fact check? Yeah, of course not. Because we know. We know it's the truth. Very simple, share good stuff. If you read a good article, share it. It's all about the clicks. So if an article gets a lot of clicks, the one who wrote it has a better chance of writing another good thing. Avoid the bad stuff. Seems easy, but there are really a lot of newspapers I just don't read anymore. I don't click them, not even with an ad blocker on. I just don't read it. The only thing they understand, I mean, not if I'm doing it alone, but if a lot of people do it and they lose the money from the advertisement, then yeah. And of course, sadly, this is not actually fixing the problem. It's like, a few ideas, but yeah, the best I could come up with. So that's more or less it. This picture is from Shingal, just that you know it. And there's a little funny story. This guy here, the big one, he was kind of my driver to this part of the world. And later he added me on Facebook and wrote like on my Facebook page, hey, I'm the intelligence officer who escorted you to the site there. Nice to meet you again. I said, okay, that's interesting. So being intelligence officer isn't something secret around there. And he says, no, my uniform actually reads intelligence agency. So okay, why not? So, okay, again, my name is Enno Lenze. Just if you want to stay in contact or if you want to read my stuff or whatsoever, here's my blog, my Twitter handle, and there you find all ways of staying in touch with me. I hope that in this time I was able to somehow sum up what's going on in the journalist world and war correspondent world. I think nobody here is really shocked about it, but maybe I could give you an inside view or tell you some details you haven't known before. So, are there any questions, or are you talking now? I'm not sure.
Thank you very much for this. So in Switzerland, the French-speaking television, they have a big war correspondent who was going. So he makes videos, and he was going to Iraq also. So they made an experiment. So they spend the money, and they made an experiment where they took a YouTuber with them. Okay, and they make this double documentary. So you have the official documentary from the Swiss TV, and at the same time you have the YouTube documentary who made 1 million views in a couple of hours, just reporting on Iraq on the front line. And so it was a great experience, and I think they want to do a couple of things. Do you have such experience of experiments in the photo and written media where you try to mix with other type of news mechanism?
I haven't heard about it, but it's interesting. But what I saw a lot of times, that I had a really big reach with my blog post, like being in Mosul or something, and you could read the stuff more or less somewhere else, but somehow this not being a big newspaper or something is attractive for readers, or they trust me more, or I don't know what. But sometimes I have like 300 to 400,000 page views on these articles, which is incredible, as I think. Or it's not even being war correspondent, but it was so weird. From Thursday evening to Friday morning, I was traveling to Vienna, so 2 days ago, with the night train, where I had a single room with a bed and a shower, and I just made a selfie and said, I'm in a train with my own bed and my own shower. And up to now, in like 2 days, it had nearly 1,000 shares on Twitter, and I think 10,000 likes, even from a lot of like verified accounts like the European Parliament in Germany and stuff like this. And I thought, okay, but you know that these trains exist and there are better pictures. Why is my tweet so amazing? It's like, but I think sometimes, and maybe I guess they picked a YouTuber who has some experience before and some fans and so on. But I think this kind of like citizen reporter, it's a lot of people don't trust let's say the regular media anymore. Not that they don't trust them at all, but that they say, yeah, okay, I'm not sure, because we had like wrong articles in every newspaper now and then. It just happens. And then you say, okay, he can't be worse, but I kind of know him, or a friend of mine knows him, or I trust him because it looks interesting. But I had one thing, I was, when like a few years ago, I did a Facebook live stream of crossing an 8-lane road in Iraq. Because I was trying to get on the other side for minutes, and then I started live stream and said, okay, I'm trying to get on the other side. And it was like 5 minutes till I crossed the road. And at the end, I had 600 live viewers watching me crossing the road, and maybe hoping that I get killed or something. But so I think I saw stuff like this several times, that it's somehow more interesting for not even for younger people, also for older people. I think one of the problems really this trust that gets lost to the other media, a bit of it. But I haven't heard of an experience like this before, but it's really interesting. Thank you.
I've got 2 questions.
Yes?
Just no,
to the
don't
big
touch
end.
it. Just
Yeah.
speak.
Not the point one.
The first is what's now the story with the Erbil, and the second is you were mentioning that only Welt and Bild-Zeitung is also going to Iraq and Syria. What do you think about the coverage of Jürgen Todenhöfer?
Okay, first of all, the story of Erbil was a rocket was flying by, and then it hit the ground like 70 kilometers away from it. But 70. So, yeah. It's like building an airport 70 kilometers from a city and calling it Munich Airport, you know? But yeah, it was really far away. It wasn't even close. So yeah. And Jürgen Todenhöfer, he has an incredible knowledge, really, and he was everywhere always. He's one of the few who actually met the Islamic State terrorist and went out alive. I think his whole knowledge is really incredible, amazing, and I really like the information, but I don't like his way of writing. And you always know the last paragraph will always be, and it's the Americans' fault. That's always a conclusion. And so I think, but I know how he's writing stuff. I know it's always the American fault, whatever happens in the world. But still, the information he's giving me is interesting, like the inside view of being in the Islamic State area and like seeing it from his perspective. It's still interesting. Yeah, but it's a bit tricky. I like the information, but not the way he's presenting it.
Another question?
I think so. Let's say, of course, I haven't read every story, but the stuff I read about what I'm interested in, I think, yes, it's reliable. But then, of course, it's the Americans' fault. You always know that before.
Wait a second. Wait a second. Please use the microphone or the stream will not hear you.
But how can it be reliable when he was invited? It's like to work with a fixer.
No, I don't think it's not unreliable because he was invited. I think I don't see the point that it must be this because of that. You can be invited and still write the truth. I think that's two different things. I think if he would do a live coverage from there, I wouldn't trust a single word, of course. But if you write it later when you're safe again, yeah, then I don't think that, like by definition, it can't be reliable. Then you have to read it and see if you want to trust it or not.
I have two questions which are connected. You told us about wrong articles and that you write to them. How often does this happen? Also minor ones. And connected to that, you told us about the bad print media like Spiegel and so on, who used your stuff without permission. Are there also good ones which you recommend?
It's tricky. First of all, how often do I tell people that the articles are really wrong? So not in my opinion, but really not right. That's about daily. Just one really common thing which happens again and again and again in German media. It's like somebody used a firearm to rob a store, but the person is unknown and the weapon was not found. Then I said, okay, how do you know that it was a firearm? Not a toy, not a CO2 gun, a firearm. If no shots were fired and you don't have the gun. Then they say, what else should it be? So yeah, that's a question. But could it be that it was just a toy? They say, yeah, but it's still a firearm then. And stuff like this is really nearly daily. Or like a few weeks ago, that a cafe in Frankfurt was robbed using a machine gun. And a machine gun is usually something which weighs like 10, 20, 30 kilo, and often you need two people to operate it. I said, do you mean an assault rifle maybe? The one you can carry around? Because I don't think that two people went in, setting up the box and the tripod and saying, wait, we want to rob you, but it takes some time. It's tricky here. And on the other hand, if you have a machine gun, why do you rob a cafe and not something big? And then they said, yeah, we don't know. I said, okay, but you wrote it. No, we didn't write it. It was the agency. I said, yeah, but it's on your paper. Yeah, but we are not reliable for it. We just copy and paste it. So it's not our fault. And it doesn't matter. And at the end, it was a toy. But stuff like this always. And the bigger things like, I think, twice a month. And the other thing, are there good sources? That's a really big problem. There's nothing I want to recommend anymore. There's not like the one thing where I say, read it. There are several freelancers who basically live there, at least for this area, like Frederike Gerdring or Vladimir van Wilsburg. I'm not exactly sure. I will send links later. There are two guys who are living in the area since years. They are very well connected, and they're not about like the spectacular headlines. Sometimes they say, yeah, and today nothing happens. You say, okay, that's fine. Nobody got killed. It's okay as well. And they are trustworthy and reliable, but only for, this little bit. And if you want to have a newspaper, you can just think, I don't have a recommendation anymore. It's really sad. Sorry. Jetzt darfst du.
Yeah. You said like the journalism 40, 50 years ago been much better.
I think so.
Yeah, I have a quote here which I posted last week on Facebook. It's a very short piece of a special cablegram to the Reform Advocate, which is a Jewish newspaper in Chicago. It's from 1909, so it's 111 years ago. And it says, General Slavinsky, commandant of the city prison in Minsk, was shot to death by a Jewish anarchist, according to the statement of the police, whose views cannot be confirmed as the anarchist escaped and his identity cannot be established.
But at least you have the facts in and you can make up your mind.
Facts, they doubt that he was a Jew, but they still know that he was an anarchist.
Yes.
So every time I get mad at the news in the radio because I know it better sometimes. So every time I know something about the subject and a journalist reports it on the radio, I it's hard to listen because you know it better, right?
Yes.
So my kids are like, don't you switch why are you still listening to that? So like to make a point here, like if I know just about little few subjects, and I know every time there's a report that's completely wrong, then I need to assume that they're wrong the whole time, even about the subject that I'm not an expert in. So just like kids, listen up, don't trust everything. So just like take it with a grain of salt, and just like do fact checking and something. Because if you know about the topic, it will be wrong. So why do you say that this was different 60 years ago, 50 years ago? And was it?
I think, at least in the big media, it was because they had more time and more money, and they wanted to write the right stuff. So maybe they did it wrong because they had wrong assumptions or something. But at least in the big media, they didn't say, I don't care, which is really often a reply. If nowadays I tell people, but it is wrong what you've written. I don't care. It's, lunch break. And then when I talk to journalists who worked or now being pensioners or something, but worked at that time, they say, yeah, but if somebody told me I was wrong and he had proof or kind of proof, I was listening to him and I want to improve my work. And then my boss asked, why did you write it and why was it wrong? And I met one guy who's really, really interesting. He was later, it was a bit staged with the diaries of Hitler, where they say he found it and he made it up. The story is completely bullshit. He had somebody who wanted to sell this Hitler diaries and said, I have no clue if they're fake or not. And then they asked 4 experts who confirmed that it's completely 100% the truth and right. And these 4 experts have never seen something of Hitler before. But stuff like this. But in the time before, he did a lot of interesting stuff in finding German Nazis who were hiding somewhere, and he pretended to be a big Nazi fan and want to talk about the old times and stuff like this, and was very good in finding Nazis and let them talk a lot and recording it. But he said sometimes he was away for 4 months and said, okay, dear colleagues, I'm gone and I will be back maybe in summer, and then I bring a story. And they said, okay, that's fine. Try this nowadays. And they trusted him because he was good and so on, but it just doesn't happen anymore. So of course there was bullshit journalism all the time. But let's say on the top, there were a lot of people who really wanted to tell the truth and tried everything and were angry on their colleagues if they didn't do the research well and stuff like this, at least in the big newspapers. And now, it's very sad, but Spiegel is a very bad example for that. They were very reliable in the past, and they had really good journalists, and they still have a few, but now it's mixing up. And they write such amounts of bullshit. Like last year I think it was last year when they had the headline Nazis welcome. Then they said, yeah, but it was a comment. So we are not reliable for it. Yeah, we say Nazis welcome and they should have a place in our society and so on. But it was a comment. So, yeah, then Auschwitz was liberated by the Americans. Said, yeah, okay, maybe the Russians, Americans, or somebody liberated it. And yeah, or they said they found a secret network of Jewish organizations who are like the puppet masters of our government. And I said, hey, I know this guy. He's my dentist. He's a puppet master. So he's my dentist. And besides that, he's managing the German government. Amazing, Elio, you did it. And then they changed the headline without noting it anywhere from they are like steering the German government to they want to influence it. Oh. I say, okay, that's maybe, a little bit different. And stuff like this happens all day long now. I think, and that didn't happen before. So that's what I mean. Like you had bad journalism, of course, but yeah. So.
Maybe a common question. I don't know, like I can very much understand your frustration about the journalism as it is. Like for us in the Brussels, it works somehow similar because like it happened to me just now, like last week. Some people from the group met some Dutch organization interested in meat production. And basically the result was, well, it would be nice idea to have higher prices for meat. Euractiv wrote a nice case like green and socialist lawmakers are supporting tax on meat. Now it was translated to Czech, and from everywhere I'm receiving emails. You guys are in the group who is willing to tax our meat. How do you dare? Yeah. Well, this is not really the case. I have never participated in that discussion, but like from everywhere I am seeing like people are insulting me for something I've never ever done.
Welcome to the internet.
Yeah, that's it. But like, this is the problem, and I really get frustrated when you have spoke about the Spiegel, because those are the organizations who are more or less on the European level represented by this umbrella organization like European Union of Publishers and so on, and they always come to you and tell you, we want to do a good journalism. That's why we want tax Google in order to pay for like linking our articles. Well, if you publish bullshit, how do you dare to get money from Google for like just that they link you? You should pay them for like advertising your poor stuff.
Put one line in your robots.txt and Google will never ever do anything with you again. It's so easy.
Well, that's what I always told them, that you will be happy. No one will care about you. People will just.
You will have a lot of free time.
Yeah, they don't want to understand it. And now the question is like, how should we proceed from this crazy situation? Because obviously we are kind of like, or the whole market is being controlled by those companies, obviously doing no fact checking, no good journalism, just willing to get money from wherever it comes. And by the way, in Germany it is relatively good, because you can say, well, there are two people from Spiegel. Spiegel is actually like covering whole Germany, and this is quite a big market. But imagine what happens in small countries like Czechia or maybe even Estonia. Do you know how many people will read an article in Estonian? Like I've read your blog post. Actually, it's in German. That's fine. I can read German, but most of my countrymen cannot. Yeah. And that's why like the smaller market is even more isolated. So now the question is like, how actually can we ensure that there will be a good journalism? Is there some way of rating of the journalists, or how can we like organize this?
I don't know. Seriously, I have no clue. But I only see the problem since years, and it's growing, and people think it's normal. Like, it's normal not to trust a newspaper. It's completely normal these days not to trust journalism. And if you say, have you ever read fake news? Everybody says, of course, I'm reading the newspaper. Of course I read fake news. I don't know. It's really, I think it's a really long shot to fix this. First, to tell people, well, that's not what journalism is about. Get it to your mind, and then find somebody who is willing to produce a good newspaper which people are willing to pay money for. And I think people are so used to it's free, and maybe it's, it's only 70% the truth, but it's free. That's for most people that's okay. Or for most people it's like in the Simpsons series. It's like, does my beer get more expensive? No, then it's fine. That's like the only important thing. Car same price, meat same price. Can I still drive my diesel? Fine, I read fake news. I don't care. That's of course not for everybody, but a lot of people are not really interested in good journalism, and that's it's a minority, I think. Not a really small minority, but I guess if you ask, do you want to have cheap beer and cheap cars or reliable news? I know where the majority is. And for a lot of people, I'm doing, it's a different project, but often I see school classes of like all ages. I ask them, does anybody here read a newspaper, like online or anything, but do you read a newspaper at least weekly? And usually it's like one. But wait. And it's not the teacher. So it's getting bad, yes. And I don't know how to fix it. Sorry.
Next question.
Okay, it's a remark. So
Yep.
the basic rule is never trust a single source.
Yeah.
Because even if I say you the truth from my view of perspective, be careful. So second meaning. One of the problems is that the fact finders and the archives in the press were fired at first because, and now you have the problem that they all copy the same agency. In far times, Zeit, Spiegel, every had at least one journalist in the country go and check the facts, and so I can take also at that time two newspapers and then check them together, and then I get the fact. And I think the second problem now for the press is that they tried to influence the public meanings. So they are now part of the game and not observers of the game. And that now I think they also self find out that that become a problem for them.
Yes, true.
Yeah, hello, Enno. Thank you for this nice impressions. First, I thought on this old sentence, the first victim in the war is the truth. Yes. But you see a little broader scope, brighter scope. So I spoke sometimes with a journalist, and he told me, oh, he want really better articles, but they won't accept it by the companies. Yes. And this is also the problem. Yes. So I think I have decided to spend every month a fee for Collective. This is an independent journalistic network. What do you think about that? Is this a way to have independent journalists?
I think yes, that's one of the ways, but the problem is that they start very little with only a few of people spending money. So they don't cover everything. It's not like a normal newspaper, so you don't read it regularly. And at some point people say, I'm not reading it that much, I'm not going to pay for it, because you have like this, the typical problem with starting. They would need like 5 million in a bank account to really get it running and then have a year or something to start it. And so it's all there. I think that's one of the bigger projects, but there are several. They're always like they have a few good people and maybe they get a better contract elsewhere and stuff like this. And none of these are really starting through, and none of them are really producing a really daily newspaper. It's always like this story and that, and here is a good source and so on, and it's good, but it's not a replacement for your newspaper. And I think that's the problem, because it's like it's not their fault. They're doing a good job, but they just don't get the people working there and the people paying for them to really get it running on a big scale. And so I think it's good to support them, but it's like it's not the one big thing which took off really.
Next one.
Thank you for the very interesting discussion here, because it's about now and about the future. Just want to make a small remark, because before Mikuláš was complaining about the languages, And when I was working with a Spanish pirate, he taught me to use different browsers, and Google Chrome can translate a whole page into just any languages. And I hope that the Czech language will also be among it. But that's just my answer to that question.
Hi, my name is Shoresh. I think the major problem in this kind of setting and this bad journalism is the kind of social bias. We have seen there's a study about Fridays for Future by the Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung, came in last year. And it was interesting to see how the interaction between media coverage and the activism of Friday for Futures, and it was interesting to see the social bias and how close, because journalism, the people get barely paid, so it's more about a higher income class coming into journalism because they have the money to make this party journalism, as they can afford it. And by this we have a social bias because you are always running around in the same areas with the same people and you have the same background. And this makes this less of diversity is a big issue because then you are writing the same stuff because you live with the same people. And I think the social bias is the major issue. And if we don't talk about this, because then we have to pay more, we have to make it more diverse, then we can influence and be more resilient about all this. And this struggle is barely spoken because then you have making the power balance in this country and about social mobility. All this kind of stuff we have to address, we have to discuss, and many people are uncomfortable because of this, because many people say we are the good ones, but they really want to ignore that they have very much privileges which they don't want to talk, because then we have a problem for them.
Yes. Hinter dir?
Someone else?
I will maybe a little bit specify my problem with the languages. Of course, I know about the machine translation, and I'm really happy about the progress it happened in that field in last years. As now you can really read the content without knowing the language, so you can understand it. Of course, there are mistakes, but the overall niveau kind of improved. Still, what we do not see is that actually the news are penetrating from country to country. If I, for example, and I'm pretty sure that it happens, if you look on let's say, the people who are coming to read your web page, who follow your Facebook, who follow your Twitter, what you usually see that they are very, very much from your home country. Like, for example, I know that on my Twitter, there are 60% people watching me who are Czechs, and I'm from the Czech MEPs. I'm probably the one with lowest percentage of Czech followers, and this is very much same for the media. I can't tell you why Czechs are just watching, let's say, Czech web servers, but this is the case, and that mostly so that anyone can go to that blog page. Most people do not do that. So now the question is how in practice to turn it, because theoretically the opportunity exists, but in practice it does not happen.
And just one thing there. If you know somebody want to translate my stuff or want to use it, feel free. I like getting the word spread. I'm very happy. Sometimes people are translating some of my blog posts into English. And there's one problem, not only translating it. Sometimes I'm referring to something in Germany, international readers won't understand. And then it's good, there's one guy now, Chris, who translated the Mosul stuff and so on. And he's good in rephrasing stuff foreigners won't understand and things like this. So I think, it's not, that's helpful as well. That could be also interesting, building up a network of people who are willing to translate stuff from others who are willing to share it. I like when my content is shared and I don't charge anybody for it, unless they are making money with it, then it's fine, then I want to have my fair share. But like if you know like non-profit people who want to translate stuff, or if you just want to do it. Because I think, yeah, that's a problem. Like I prefer reading in German and English because I understand it, but I don't like having a translated French text. Even if it's good nowadays, the stuff you say, it's like, it's just translated, somehow second class. Okay.
I think this was the last question, so one from me. I hope you can do us a little favor. You know, social media is active. I was asked to ask you if you would pose with your magic wand again, so they can all make a picture with you and the nice logo. And also the techie team may take their pictures now. So, you have 2 minutes to take pictures from Enno. Yeah, you have to pose for 2 minutes now, I'm sorry.
Your joystick, huh?
Yeah, that's great. And while Enno is busy with posing, I will tell you the schedule. We will be having a lunch break of about an hour. And if you like our nice little merchandise stuff, just go over. We will be able to help you. Oh, you look so nice. Thank you very much, Enno. It was most interesting.